In this video, we're going to be taking another cheeky look at VeChain and specifically the price action of the VET coin. We'll be taking a look at some of the sentiment within the space. How is that fear and greed index looking as a whole, and how is it when compared to VeChain specifically? We'll also be having a look at things like Bitcoin dominance and, of course, that most important VeChain chart on the weekly, daily, and hourly views. Guys, if you find this video useful and informative, do go ahead and hit that like button. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you'd like to stay up to date with those new cryptocurrencies, the hidden gems, the technical analysis and news, then do go ahead and subscribe. By subscribing, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed, so why not? Right, Chris, with all that said, is there anything else that you would like to add before we jump on down and start talking everything VeChain?
Yeah, just let us know in the comments below where you kind of feel you are with VeChain in the bull cycle. Really interested to know, get your feelings.
Fantastic. Right, let's jump on down and get right on into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, guys, we're going to start here. This is the generalized fear and greed index for the entire crypto space. Right now, it's actually dropped 1 point from 26 yesterday to 25 today. So again, we've gone from fear to extreme fear, so lots more fear entering the space here. And what we'll do is we'll have a look and see how this kind of compares to VeChain in a moment. And obviously, how the entire crypto space, Bitcoin included, is supposedly feeling extreme fear at the moment. So let's jump on over to advice.io. This is their dashboard. Here we have a VeChain loaded up. We have 6 power factors in front of us here. We've got the fear and greed index in the top left. We've got the 𝗕𝗢𝗔𝗠𝗘 ratio over on the right hand side. We've got the Sharpe ratio middle left. We have moving averages middle right, and obviously VeChain profitability bottom left there, and obviously peak end value demand over in the bottom right. So let's just focus in on this fear and greed index for VeChain specifically, right? So the AI here has driven out, actually it's been rated D. Now a D rating for VeChain is extreme fear, or the equivalent of extreme fear for the generalized fear and greed index. So ultimately VeChain is susceptible to quite a bit of fear right now. And I think that this is a common problem with some of these lower cap coins. Ultimately, people get fed up of waiting. They listen to lots of FUD that's out there. And they lose faith in what the project is trying to do. And as a result of this, the fear and the greed index does represent what that sentiment is looking like in the space. So right now, when it comes to VeChain, it's rated D according to the artificial intelligence here. And this is in line with the generalized fear and greed index. So again, it looks like VeChain has succumbed to extreme fear at the moment. With this being said, I do think this is likely to be short-lived, and things are likely to move back into a more greed-based scenario in due course. Just think about what things were like back in August of 2020. And as we fast approach July into August, I think we're going to start seeing some interesting things happen here for VeChain. With that being said, we can also take a look at the 𝗕𝗢𝗔𝗠𝗘 ratio. This is your liquidity. And again, you can see how liquidity was actually pretty decent at the start of the year, moving down to basically being rated D here from the artificial intelligence. This is showing us that there are potential problems with liquidity when it comes to VeChain and the VET token. So it'd be interesting to see how this one plays out. There's the 𝗕𝗢𝗔𝗠𝗘 ratio here has been, and the AI has been flagging up issues with liquidity on many different altcoins. VeChain is one of those. So it'd be interesting to know why this is. Still haven't gotten to the bottom as to what exactly is going on with this liquidity issue that is affecting so many coins. We obviously have a little bits and pieces around Harmony One, for example, where Binance are not allowing withdrawals and all that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if there's something similar actually happening here with VeChain, and that is causing so many liquidity issues. And obviously we are still waiting on Coinbase to potentially list VeChain as well. So we'll probably have to do a whole video on what our expectations are around the liquidity aspects of VeChain as it potentially does get listed on Coinbase in the future. Now, if we take a look down at the Sharpe ratio, because we have extreme fear in the space and liquidity issues, we are having a bit of an issue here with Sharpe ratio, which is risk to rewards. This is still slipping down. And again, my expectations are that eventually, once you have that fear and greed sentiment in the market change from extreme fear back up into a reasonable area, we're going to start seeing the risk to rewards actually change and shift a bit. We were in a bit of a recovery mode up here towards the beginning of June, and we slipped back down a little bit. So we'll have to see how this kind of reacts in time. But in terms of having VeChain in your portfolio at the moment, according to the Sharpe ratio here, it's at high risk of those rewards. So if you've seen significant increase in your portfolio due to VeChain, you could start to see that slip a little bit. But with that being said, I feel the damages here is pretty much already done. And we'll get into the charts as to why I think that in a moment. And if we take a look at the actual return on investment, the profitability, it's an A1 rating. So again, this is the best rating that the artificial intelligence can give. So you have the best profitability in terms of ratings here for VeChain. So despite the fact that right now we are susceptible to liquidity issues, we've got extreme fear in this space, and there are potential risks to the rewards, the profitability remains up there as an A1 rating. So this is a really good, strong sign that things here are not too bad. And obviously peak end value demand is also up there at B2. So again, from a top level kind of profitability perspective, you're not doing too bad. But right now in the shorter term pieces, you do have issues with fear and we do have issues with liquidity. So with those things being said, it's always important that we understand where we are in the cycle. We take a look at Bitcoin dominance for this. And here we go to see what happened in 2017, where Bitcoin's dominance did drop down to 37% before riding all the way back up towards 67%. It touched on a few key areas such as 50%, slight pullback before actually launching up towards that 70% area. And it's at this high point here of the 70% back in the last bull run that the altcoins went parabolic, bringing Bitcoin's dominance down towards 30%. And again, if we take a look at where we are, we obviously have more coins in the space, which meant that Bitcoin's dominance was not able to actually increase higher than up here towards that kind of 70% area. This is where it kind of stabilized at its peak. The more coins that entered the circulation meant that actually when the bull run started, Bitcoin dominance did drop down towards 39% and has started to increase. Now, my expectations are that obviously we'll move up towards the 50% area. I'm not confident that we'll move up towards the 70% area. I think 60% is probably a reasonable area to expect at the max point here for Bitcoin to actually rally up a little bit. And it's at this point that I do believe that Bitcoin dominance will drop back down to 30%, which is where we'll start seeing those there's real peaks where altcoins go parabolic, right? So again, this is kind of mimicking exactly what we've seen in previous bull runs, and nothing out of the ordinary here in any stretch of the imagination. And again, the expectations are that we will go to 50%, maybe a little bit higher than that, before being pulled all the way back down towards 30% level. And this is when these altcoins go parabolic, including VeChain. So it's always good to understand how that's kind of developing. Now, if we take a look at this is VeChain to the USDT. This is the weekly chart, and we are using Binance as the data source. So on this weekly chart, we can see that we put on here the Elliott wave, impulse wave, 5 waves to the upside. We can see that it started in March of 2020 during that crash. Wave 1 was completed in August. So again, guys, if anyone was around in this space, specifically in VeChain that early on, you would have been very aware of what was going on in August when we got those fantastic highs being set for VeChain. VeChain then went into correction wave 2, and again, this looks like a bear market to many because of the duration that these things last, but that isn't really the case. This is not the stock market, this is the crypto market, and ultimately 30% swings are commonplace, whereas in the stock market, a 20% downswing is classed bear market, and here that shouldn't really be the case. So ultimately, you saw with wave 2 here is basically a correction wave. It did last from August through to November, so several months, and basically this actually ended here in about the week commencing the 2nd of November. Then we trickled into wave 3. Now this actually peaked up here from November to April during wave 3. This was about the 12th of April. It peaked up there. Some fantastic highs were set for VeChain. Now this triggered into wave 4. This is where we currently are. And I do believe that the bottom has come in, but there is obviously the ability to drop down a little bit lower if that time were to come, but I don't think that is going to be the case. In many of the people who've been calling Bitcoin to go down to $20,000 or $23,000 to be exact, have actually now come out and said, actually, no, the bottom's actually in, and we're not likely to go down any lower than where it already has been. And so again, lots of people were wrecked during the Bitcoin correction, which obviously had a knock-on effect to all those altcoins as well. So when people were basically buying the dip, and then obviously the price went down even lower, they got wrecked that way, specifically on the leverage side of things. And likewise, loads of people were then shorting it because they believed that it was going to $20,000. And as a result of that, they also got liquidated when it started moving back up again. So there's a lot of manipulation when it came to Bitcoin. And basically, it was almost a bull trap and a bear trap at the same time, where both scenarios of retail investors who just were not really savvy and knowing what was going on actually got liquidated in both directions. But right now it is still quite volatile, and as a result, VeChain is also quite volatile. But I do believe the bottom is in, which is the point of that conversation. So right now, along with many of these other analysts in the space, thinking that the bottom has come in for wave 4 does mean that we'll be slowly working our way up towards wave 5. And obviously wave 5 takes VeChain up towards that dollar level. So again, things here are not looking too bad when it comes to that bigger macro picture. If you're ever in doubt, guys, do zoom out. Ultimately, when you really focus in on something really small like an hourly chart or 4-hourly chart, you don't get to have the appreciation of where things are going in the longer term or what the bigger piece of analysis is looking like. It's always important that you start with a good zoomed out view and you don't just focus in on those really kind of meaningless time frames of the smaller ones. Unless you're a day trader, it's not really going to benefit you. So let's go ahead and drill down into our daily. And what this is going to do is put on a Fibonacci retracement tool. Okay, so from this Fibonacci, we can actually start seeing what our expectations are. Okay, so we actually have quite a few things to talk about here. We have our yellow box on the scenario. This actually is the yellow box area that we need to see VeChain enter and get a closed candle above. This will truly be a bull signal moving further forward into wave 5. Now, obviously, it's an expectation that we will eventually do this, but it's always just there as a reference point to know that we'll probably find quite a bit of resistance in that yellow box as we do enter it. Okay, we obviously have loads of different resistance and support lines on the journey to the upside as we've been consolidating nicely around this area here. So again, all of these little things will make more of a difference on the hourly charts if you're into day trading. Now, the Fibonacci retracement tool is actually placed from the peak of wave 5 and the bottom of wave 4, and this actually then shows us where we're likely to go during wave 5. Okay, so again, like I said earlier, with the weekly view, our expectation was to move up towards $1, and that's exactly what this Fibonacci retracement tool does with its extensions. We can see that the 1.618 area actually takes VeChain up to 42 cents. The 2.618 takes it up to 64 cents. The 3.618 takes it up to 87 cents. And then at the top there, the 4.236 takes it to $1.01. So again, that's the expectations of wave 5. Now, again, it could go above and beyond this, depending on what else happens in the space. Obviously, this just looks at, or the technical data here looks at what has already happened and is able to predict based on that. But ultimately, if something fundamentally shifts and changes in the real world, be that they've decided to partner up with Amazon, for example, or something, to that kind of degree, you could see actually VeChain explode much further beyond this as well. And obviously, a Coinbase listing would have a little bit of a knock-on effect, although it does appear that the Coinbase effect as a whole seems to have dwindled off in this particular bull run. So again, guys, it's going to be important to see what happens as we approach these key levels for VeChain in this particular bull run, but also be mindful that something fundamental in the project could change, which could drive the price to explode much higher, but could also do the opposite and bring the price down. Let's say BMW ditch VeChain as a partner or something to that effect, right? So I think there's lots going on. There's a lot of sort of unlikely scenarios, but there's also a lot of likely scenarios as well. For now, the technicals are giving us a pretty good price expectation of where wave 5 is likely to go, and that's going to be up towards the dollar level. Now, if we do take a look at this on our hourly, this is where you'll find that most analysts are actually I say analysts, but most like YouTubers and things, they focus in on the kind of smaller time frames, the hourly, the 4-hourly. This gives you a bit of a different approach, right? It makes it look really bad, really scary. You're able to see downward trends, a few upward trends here and there. And ultimately, it's going to give you a few indications of where things are likely to go on the shorter time frames. They give you an idea of where things are going to go in the next 12 to 24 hours, maybe the next 48 hours to maybe 5 days, maybe 7 days is your maximum view here. After that, it's kind of pointless in actually looking at this. If you're looking next month, for example, you'd want to be sticking to the daily view for that. So right here, we can obviously see all of these orange lines. These are key areas of support and resistance. We obviously have a little bit of resistance right now at 10.7. And again, we were trading in these zones for quite some time. And again, there is a little bit of an upward trend along with a downward trend. We can obviously see there's a downward trend formed here. And we can obviously see that there is an upward trend well, there was an upward trend forming here that got broken, right? So our downward trend is actually stronger on this shorter time frame than our upward trend was. Okay, so the downward trend is still sustained, whereas our upward trend has been invalidated. Now, of course, you can paste these upward trends and downward trends across many different avenues and to give you different kind of outlooks, and it's really difficult to do this. Even though these are the easiest lines to draw on a chart, they're the ones that get invalidated the fastest, okay, because they mean very, very little when it comes to technical analysis unless there's a really strong trend line on a macro view rather than a micro view. These hourly trend lines, they're not the best, I have to admit. So right now we can see resistance at 10.7 with a support line actually forming at 9.8 cent on the shorter time frames. From here, the expectations are that actually the price of VeChain is likely to move up in the short term. And I say this because our relative strength index is nice and low, which means there's only one place to go, and that is going to be to the upside. So guys, the expectations here are that we'll probably fall down a little bit lower, not too much, and then we'll start seeing a correction to the upside, where we'll potentially go past 10.7 and head towards 11.2. And that's probably where we'll find more resistance until that sentiment in the market changes. Right now, the expectations are that we'll trade in around this area just here for a little while longer until the sentiment in this with VeChain changes from fear to actually being okay and reasonable. Right now, we can obviously take a look at a few other things such as volume. We can see how the volumes are really, really low. And this is pretty consistent as no one wants to get into the space yet until they understand what's going on. We can obviously take a look at the Bollinger Bands, and we can see that we're pushing right down on the lower end here. What I'll do, guys, is just make this a little bit bigger so you can see exactly what we can see here, right? So right now we can see that we're being pushed down on the lower band here. So again, a reversal is imminent because we're so low on that relative strength index. The expectations are that we'll actually start to see a bit of a move to the upside really, really soon. And again, that'll be probably coming up towards, it will definitely breach this area here, head towards 11.2 before getting another correction. The idea here is that we actually turn 10.7 cent resistance line into a 10.7 support line. Okay, so again, I think we have enough room on this relative strength index to do that. The question is, will we have the volume to push it above this orange line here on the shorter time frame? So guys, if you're a trader, then hopefully some of that is useful to you. Obviously, good to know where those Bollinger Bands are squeezing us, and obviously where those support and resistance lines are. We know that there's a downward trend that's relatively strong that was able to break our upward trend on the shorter time frames. But guys, ultimately, if you're a believer in VeChain and you understand the value of what VeChain brings to the market, then ultimately those hourly views, those 4 hourly views, they're not that important to you. It's more about where we are going in this bull run up towards wave 5. Now, Chris, we've been through a reasonable amount of information there when it comes to VeChain. Is there anything else from a fundamental point of view that you kind of want to bring up and let the guys know?
Just, there's lots of stuff happening in the background for VeChain. I expect this project to do phenomenally well. And, I read all the comments around the sentiment of the market, and it's a bear market. I guess it depends on sort of how you look at it, right? And maybe we're kind of looking at it in different ways, but we're both right, if that makes sense. Like, people are like saying it's a bear market. We don't think it's actually a bear market. It's just part of a bull market. But at the moment, the sentiment is bearish, and I kind of agree with some of the comments. But then at the same time, what is a bear market to you? Because a bear market to me, when we talk about it, is like 3 years of just barely any price discovery, right? And not much action sort of from a price perspective. But I don't think that's what we're going to see. This is very short term as part of the cycle, in my opinion.
No, I do align. I think ultimately this is why it's important to make sure that you look at the charts from the right time frame. If you look at it from an hourly point of view or 4 hourly point of view, yeah, it's going to look incredibly bearish, right? But if you look at it from a weekly point of view, it doesn't look bearish. It looks like a correction, right? And time is a key factor here because if you look at the stock market, they say anything that lasts for a prolonged period of time, usually 2 months, like 60 days, say. And is a correction of 20%. Well, obviously a correction for 20% is standard practice in this particular cryptocurrency market anyway. The industry is so small, a 20% correction is just daily practice. In terms of term frames, well, we've seen many occasions where a correction has lasted more than 60 days. An example of VeChain's wave 1 to wave 2 is the clear example of what that looks like, right? We went from August to November in a correction that lasted several months and was deeper than a 30% correction. So again, that would have been technically classed as a bear market from a stock market perspective, yet actually we went ahead and achieved wave 3, which saw phenomenal growth with VeChain. And again, wave 4 is being called bearish, even though it's quite a relatively short correction so far, but be it steep. And this is why Elliott wave theory is such an important aspect. Wave 2 has been flat, which means wave 4 has to be sharp. Okay, and what we mean by that is wave 2 was something that actually took a serious amount of time to drop down about 50% of value, 50 to 60% of the value, whereas wave 4 is something that happened very, very quickly, like a flash crash, and now we're into recovery. Okay, so the actual crashing part of wave 4 is actually technically over, and lots of people are now aligned to the fact that Bitcoin is not likely to go down to $20,000, and this comes from the people who were actually calling it to go to $20,000 to start with. This isn't just another YouTuber. This is the actual analysts who said it was going to 20, and now taking that back and say it's not going to 20. Okay, so I think ultimately when you're talking about bear markets and understanding that actually time frames matter to your perspective on this, and by zooming out to that weekly view, it definitely doesn't look bearish, it looks bullish. And again, you cannot take the stock market's definitions of bear and bull into consideration into the crypto market. They are two vastly different things. But guys, hopefully you found this video useful and informative. If you have, then do go ahead and hit that like button. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you'd like to stay up to date with the new cryptocurrencies, the hidden gems, the technical analysis and news, then do go ahead and subscribe. By subscribing, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed. So why not? With that said, done and out of the way, guys, we hope you have a fantastic day and we'll catch you all in the next one.
Take care.